So here's the thing. Historical costuming is all about using padding and your structural undergarments to provide the right silhouette. And if you've been following along my channel, you know that I haven't been the happiest with how my outfit is turning out. I don't think it's giving me quite the silhouette that I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to try to fix that silhouette by adjusting some of the undergarments. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build or make a quilted petticoat as the very first petticoat that you put on. And what that quilted fabric should do is just give it a little bit more oomph, a little bit more structure and shape to provide that right shape without having to wear so many other petticoats over it, with it being hot and having kind of like everything feeling sort of weighed down. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to rework my split bum pad, because I feel like the split bum pad works really well if you are a person who doesn't have naturally a whole lot going on in the rear end. I am sort of the exact opposite of that. I have quite a lot of volume already, and so I feel like that giant stuffed split bum pad just looks a little bit ridiculous and makes the volume sit a little bit too high on my body. So I think if I take some of the stuffing out and also maybe make the bum pad a little bit longer so that it sits lower on my body, that might fix some of the issues I'm seeing. So come along with me, let's get started on that petticoat. So the first thing to do is figure out how to turn this piece of fabric into pieces to form a circle for a petticoat that is long enough. And I'm wearing a mask here because I had maintenance in my apartment at the time. But what I figured out is I could actually fold this piece of fabric into thirds, and that would give me a petticoat that was 25 inches long, so kind of on the shorter side but not too short. And then I would be able to actually use all three pieces and not waste any fabric. Then here I'm just confirming that the length will be okay before cutting into my fabric. With the fabric cut, the next step was just to sew all three pieces together to form a tube. One of the seams I sewed about halfway up to leave room for you to stick your hand through for a pocket, or also to leave a little bit of room to overlap it when you tie it closed. That way, if you fluctuate in weight, it's not really that big of a deal. Because this fabric was so bulky, I wasn't really sure what the best way would be to finish those side seams. And I landed on just using my pinking shears to kind of provide a neater end that wouldn't unravel. It's going to be on the inside, no one's going to see it, and I guess if it becomes a problem later, I can always put some ribbon on it or encase it with other fabric. The next step was to put knife pleats in until you get that super large tube of fabric down to a circumference that will fit around your waist. And to be honest, this was the best experience I have had pleating fabric so far. I don't know if it's just that I'm getting better at pleating with practice, or if this really thick kind of stiff fabric made it easier to put the pleats in and for the pleats to kind of hold their shape with minimal pinning. One thing I did this time was that once I had all of the pleats pinned in place, I actually basted them in place, making sure that my stitches caught the edge of the pleat on both the outside and the inside edges. Because if you don't do that, then even if you've basted your pleats, like they can sort of slip downwards with the weight of the petticoat when you try it on, and then they'll get all misaligned. And this step really helped when I was putting the waistband in. I used 1-inch twill tape for the waistband, and the first thing I did was turn my petticoat inside out and then baste that waistband to that inside edge. Once that was done, I used my machine to sew it down securely and really take all the strain and weight of that line of stitches. Then I folded the twill tape over to the outside and hand stitched it down. And the way that I did that was I traveled the thread inside of the tape on the inside and poked it through to the front, and then made a very small stitch on the front that wouldn't show or get snagged. Then once I had my thread back towards the inside, I would do another really small stitch, but just to get the thread inside of the tape, not going all the way through to the front. And I would travel it like maybe about 1 inch before then putting it through to the front. And what that allowed me to do was really take a lot of time out of tacking the front edge of the waistband down. And remember, because I had already stitched it by machine on the inside, this little tacking stitch to just make it look pretty isn't going to be taking any of the weight from the garment. So it's really fine that it's not done in the most strong manner. Finally, it was time to hem the petticoat, and I just folded the bottom edge inwards by about 1 inch, put it under my foot, and stitched it up. And I probably should have done this step before I sewed all the pieces together into a tube and pleated it. So I think if you're going to try and make this petticoat yourself, it would be a bit easier to do this while your fabric is flat instead of trying to have to, like, I don't know, it was just a lot to kind of like wrestle it into the machine with it already being pleated. And finally, I used my pinking shears again just to clean up that raw edge. With the petticoat complete, it was time to move on to that darn bum pad. Alright, I hate how big this bum pad is. It's way too big because my bum is already pretty big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and take some of the stuffing out. So what I'm doing here is using my seam ripper to open up a small hole in each of the split rumps so that I have room to take some of that stuffing out. And I think I ended up reducing the amount of stuffing in each bum pad by about half, which didn't really seem to make it that much flatter at first. I think over time that stuffing will start to like settle down a little bit, because with like pulling it all out, it kind of fluffed it up more than it would normally be. Okay, so it's time to see if the changes that I have made result in a better 18th century silhouette. So the first thing I'm going to do is put on my new quilted petticoat. And because I made it a little bit too big, I'm going to kind of like overlap it and just bring the strings around and tie it off. Tuck those in. Also, I'm gonna just kind of pull it down, all that extra. Next, we have our stays, and 9 times out of 10 I get these caught on my shift and I need help, so we'll see how this goes. Unlike some people, I don't completely undo them because I think that's a pain, and I like how this, I don't know if this will come out, but I have 2 independent laces that come to the center because I find that it's a lot easier to lace it up myself and keep all the tension even that way. And then I just leave them in when I put them on. Definitely not period correct. And it's a little bit wonky because the actual lacing holes weren't put in with that in mind. But that's what works for me. Yes! It was the 1 time out of 10 that it didn't get caught on my shift. Okay. I also usually do this next part with a mirror, so we'll see how that goes. I basically just pull from both sides. Okay, yeah, I can't do this without a mirror. I will be back. Okay, so now I have it kind of roughly laced up so that it's even in the back. And then I just take my 2 loose ends and I bring them around to the front, cross them, and kind of like tuck them underneath the point in the center front. And then I just cross them in the back again. And they are like wildly different lengths. I don't know how that happened or why, but I just kind of bring the longer one around one more time and cross it under. And then I tie them together in a bow, kind of like right at this little edge. so that I can kind of tuck it under and out of the way. Okay, so now time for our new bum pad. And hopefully this will be just a little bit flatter than it was before, and I will like that look more. So with this, I don't actually tie it like right up tight on my waist because I feel like that makes the bum pad like really high and poofy. And maybe I will adjust it further and kind of like make it a little bit longer. But for right now, just to kind of see if I like the amount of poofiness, I sort of just let it sit low like that. And then when I bring the ties around, I again hook it underneath the front piece. And what that does is it just kind of like, it keeps it all in place and from like moving around too much, especially since I'm tying it so loosely. And it also keeps the front very, very like smooth and flat. You don't have like all these knots and strings kind of like sitting and adding bulk to the front. Okay. Now, I'm gonna try this white petticoat, and this petticoat was the one that I had made initially to wear as my bottommost petticoat that the quilted petticoat is now serving the function of. So I'm gonna try this and hopefully it provides just like enough to smooth out the line from like the butt pad and all the layers and stuff. It might be too long. It might poke out from the bottom, so we'll see. And this one, we tie the back first, again kind of going underneath the front of the stays. And then we pull the front up. And tie this. And the final piece, my outermost petticoat, the blue silk taffeta, goes on last. You tie it the same way, except we can't really go underneath the point of the stays anymore, so I just kind of tie it over on the side where the pockets end up being. Which I'm not bothering to put my pocket on today. Do this one, and this one I always hate tying because like I don't want the strings to like, you know, poke out the back, but it's hard to tuck them in because I've already tied the other ones so tightly, so they often kind of just get stuck in like a weird no man's land of tying things. Okay, so after going and looking at this in a mirror, I do like this silhouette better than before I adjusted the bum pads, and it's just a little bit less extreme. Like, it's still big and fluffy, and you know, that 18th century booty is still there, but it's a little bit less extreme. I do think that the split rump is not my favorite style of 18th century false bum. I think I really would prefer one of those like rounder, smoother ones that there's a pattern, I think it's called the Francis rump by Scroop Patterns, that is not split. And I think, you know, in the future I may want to make that one. But I'm liking this a lot more. And I also think that this could, I feel like the volume of this split rump could be even a little bit lower than it is. So I think I might go and make that adjustment and kind of like make it longer. And I think the reason that is because if you are someone who has, you know, you're sort of flatter naturally in the back side, you know, there's less length. Your bum pad is going to like fall lower down naturally because it doesn't have to go around very much of a curve. You know, but for those of us who naturally have a little bit more there, that curve of your rear end is like a longer space for the bum pad to travel over before it hits that point where you like want the most of your volume to be at. So I think for those of us who have a little bit more, that you may want to consider making your split bum pads longer, so that volume hits lower, so that it can kind of travel over all of that curve first. So I'm gonna go try and make an adjustment and see if my theory is correct, and I'll let you guys know. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the same twill tape that I use for the waist ties and making loops of even length that I will then run a new waist tie through. So that should drop the bum pad lower on my body while also making it so that I can tie the waistband tight around my waist. Okay, so I've made these adjustments and in a very rough manner, and if this works out, then I'll go back and like fix it nicely. I've also done this without taking off any of my petticoats, so I'm gonna try to put this on also without taking off any petticoats. Let's see how that goes. Okay, yes, right now I have a very droopy split bum pad going on. But I think I'm on the right track. I think I'm going to make it like maybe half as long, and see what that looks like. Okay, I'm liking this a lot better. What do you guys think? I think the bulk is sitting in a much nicer looking place now. It's maybe still just like a smidge too low, but maybe I almost think that I could like add some of that stuffing back in, and that might fix that problem. And now that I am thinking about this, I probably created this problem myself because when I initially made the split rump, I shortened it to begin with. Because I thought, okay, I am very short. I'm 4'11", and so when I make things, I always have to shorten them. You know, dresses, shirts, pants, you name it, I have to shorten it. So I thought, why would it be any different with the bum pad? And if I left it the way that the pattern called for in the American Duchess book, it probably would have worked out just fine. So I think it's the kind of thing that you are going to have to play with as everything, based off of your height, your body proportions, but I'm liking this a lot more, and I think I'm going to try it on with my jacket to make sure that I still kind of like the vibe with the jacket on. Well, friends, I don't know. Now that I put the jacket on, I'm not sure I like it. I feel like I've just been looking at it too much, and I don't know if it looks right now. Like, does it look better or does it look worse than before I started messing with it? I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to ask you guys to pretty please leave a comment in the comments section and tell me what you think. Like, does this look like the appropriate 18th century silhouette that matches the silhouette in the Chocolate Girl? If you don't know what I'm referring to, you can just go Google The Chocolate Girl by Jean-Etienne Lyotard. That's his name. Or you can go watch, I have a couple videos in my Chocolate Girl playlist that go over that painting. But yeah, I need help, because at this point I've been looking at it way too long and I have no idea. I cannot tell if this looks right or if it just still looks like weird. So thanks for watching this video. Hopefully it's helpful for you to kind of come along this journey and see like all these weird fitting challenges that I'm having, and like second guessing myself and fiddling with things. Hopefully it helps you kind of not feel like everyone who does historical costuming just makes something and it's perfect and beautiful like instantaneously, right? It's difficult, but not in an insurmountable kind of way. Like, we got this. We can do this. We are doing this. So yeah, thank you so much. If you want more videos like this one, if you want to follow along with my Chocolate Girl project and get recommendations for really cool historical costuming books and ideas for your own costuming or art adventures, this is the channel for you. So please like this video and subscribe. Bye guys.